Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to film a very special video that I've been wanting to film for a very long time. I feel like every YouTuber says that. But that video is my favorite sapphic books, aka sapphic book recommendations. So, as you may or may not know, my sapphic identity is very important to me, and because of it, I've discovered so much amazing, show-stopping, fabulous content, like podcasts, books, music, movies, and today I'm going to share some of my favorite books that have sapphic representation. And without further ado, let's get into the list. So the first book I want to talk about is a book I read in 2021 during a work shift because it was that addictive and I couldn't put it down. And that book is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. And by the way, this book is written by a man. And that's very interesting. Like most of the time, sapphic books written by men are not good, but this actually is good. So it's about these two women who are in an online chat room, and one of them is trying to buy an apple peeler from the other that's like very special and antique-esque. And then there's this sort of situation happening that escalates, and it's very weird, it's very unhinged, and that's why I love it so much. And it's a horror, if you can tell by the cover. It's a horror sapphic book. And I want to read more horror sapphic books, so if you have any recommendations, please let me know. Another one that's kind of horror-y is We Had to Remove This Post. That one is also kind of horror-y, but I didn't like it as much as Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. But if you want to read that too, you're welcome to. Next up, I would want to recommend Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This book is YA, so it's for teenagers. However, I feel like it transcends that age range and anyone can read it and they will enjoy it. So it's basically set in the 1950s, and there is this Chinese girl, and she is in high school and she's slowly discovering her sapphic identity and the possibility that she is a lesbian. And one day she discovers this club that's a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club, and she goes there with her friend from math class, and she finds out about drag king performers and lesbian couples who go there, but everything has to be in secret because being gay was illegal back in the 1950s, and it focuses on butch femme dynamics, which is something that we don't really see as much in literature today, but it's very important historically for the lesbian community, and it is so good, and I highly recommend it. It didn't make it into my 2021 favorite books because it was the last book I read, but looking back on it, I would totally put it on the list if I were to do that. But I didn't. But it's fine. I'm telling you now, it's amazing. Read it. The next book I want to talk about is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This book is set in university, but it's still YA, but it's set in university. So it's about a girl who has lost her parents way before the story takes place, but she recently lost her grandpa right before starting university, and university is kind of her escape from her previous life that she lived in the West Coast, and her university, I think it's in the East Coast, and she's been very lonely and dealing with, I think, depression and mental health struggles. And during winter break, her best friend from the West Coast comes to visit her, but she's not just her best friend, right? And it's very introspective. It only happens during the span of like a few days, but there's a lot of flashbacks from the life before, and it's very sweet and sad and short, and I really liked it. So the next book I want to talk about is a book that I did put in my bisexual book recommendations last year, but ever since I've discovered that the author does not identify as bisexual, or maybe she did in the past, but she doesn't identify as that anymore. I think she's a lesbian or just goes by queer, and she's also polyamorous, I think. Don't quote me on that. But that book is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and this book is a memoir written like fiction using horror and fairy tale tropes, which is very interesting. She also reads the audiobook herself, and I read the audiobook, fell completely head over heels in love, and this book became my favorite book of the year in 2021. So it's basically about her life, and specifically the time when she was in a relationship with another woman and how that relationship slowly turned into an abusive relationship, and then how it eventually ended. It's very sad and traumatic, but it's written so masterfully, and the author really flexes her skills and her MFA. Her writing is exquisite, and I have never read writing like that ever in my life. And I want to read more by the author, but I tried her short story collection. I'm not a fan of short stories, so I'm waiting for her to drop a novel or another piece of work. I don't know, something. Please release something, because I will eat that up. And yeah, I really, really hope you like it. The next book I want to talk about is also memoir, but this one is more humorous, and that book is Girls Can Kiss Now by Jill Gutowitz. So you might know Jill Gutowitz as one of the hashtag Twitter lesbians online, and this is basically her detailing her coming out journey, but also her analyzing specific pop culture moments in the past that have centered lesbians or have talked about lesbian culture, and how slowly they have made lesbians be more mainstream, more popular. And yeah, it's so much fun to read. This is a book that made me discover the Gaylor community, which if you don't know guys, you probably think Taylor Swift is straight, but you're wrong. And even though right now we're not hearing such great things, that I don't like what's happening right now with Taylor Swift and Maddie Healy, who I don't like at all. But please dip your toes into the Gaylor community, because you will never hear her music the same way again. But anyways, going back to Girls Can Kiss Now, it's very fun to read. The audiobook is also narrated by the author, and it's just great. It's just amazing. And then another book that's very similar to this one is Greedy by Jen Winston, but in this case, it's not by a lesbian author, it's by a bisexual author, and she details her coming out journey and coming to terms with her bisexuality. This one I think is like less sapphic per se, because the book does focus a lot on her life prior coming out as bisexual. So it does detail a lot about her encounters with men and her dating men, which I know is not something us sapphics want to read about a lot. Like, I don't even remember the last time I read a straight romance. Oh wait, I do remember, and that's because my best friend made me do it. I wouldn't pick it up myself. It was last year. The audiobook is read by the author. Highly recommend. By the end of the book, you do see her more homosexual tendencies, and I don't want to spoil it, but technically you can't spoil someone's real life. If you want to follow her on Instagram, you'll see who she ends up with. But like, it's a good ending. I promise. It's not one of those, oh yeah, she ends up with a cis man in the end anyway, so whatever. I promise it's a good ending. Not that there's anything wrong with ending up with a cis man as a bisexual. Like, that cis man better be an ally, better be a very strong ally. He better be on the same page. And that's all I have to say on this issue. Moving on, the next book I want to talk about is a book I'm reading right now. I haven't finished it yet, but I still want to include it. And that is Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. This book is very, very important to lesbian history, but at the same time it's very, very sad. And after I finish it, I can't wait to get back to more lesbian joy, because this is a lot of lesbian trauma. And I understand how it's important to talk about it, but also I'm like, this is so sad. This is very depressing. But it's basically about this main character called Jess, and how she slowly discovers that she is a butch lesbian, and how life becomes increasingly harder as she gets older because of that identity. And again, this also talks about butch femme dynamics, which is also very important to lesbian history. And yeah, please read it. But it's very hard to find though. My library didn't have it, so I had to read it online from the website that the author has. So that's a good way if you want to read it. That's a very easy and quick way. Just go to Leslie Feinberg's website and you'll find it. And then 2 graphic novels I want to talk about are Spinning and Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. Spinning by Tilly Walden is a memoir. It details her journey with figure skating, I think that's what it's called. But it also talks about her sexuality and how she comes out as a lesbian. It's a very, very nice graphic novel. I really liked it. And Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me is also like a butch femme situation. But this one details how lesbian relationships are so messy, and how you break up and get back together and break up and get back together, and how no lesbian gets over her ex, really, which I don't believe. I feel like it is possible to get over your ex, but a lot of people don't get over their ex. Anyways, it's very good, but I haven't read it in a while, so I don't really remember like the details of this plot that much. But yeah, it's a nice graphic novel if you want a quick read. And then 2 more books that I actually read this year recently. The first one is So Happy For You. This book screams millennial lesbian, because when I was reading it, I was like, there's something off about this book. Why does it sound so weird? And I was like, is the author not a lesbian, or is the author not a queer woman? And then I looked her up online. She is a queer woman. She's married to a woman. So I was like, okay, then it must be her being a millennial. I don't know why. There's just something about millennial lesbians. They just sound a certain way that's a little off. I don't know why, but the author is queer. I can guarantee that. And the main character is also a lesbian. But she's just a little... She's a little annoying. They just speak differently from us Gen Zers. And that's it. That's fine. We can have our differences and still get along. So anyway, this book is about a lesbian who has had a best friend, but now her relationship with her best friend is a little rocky, partially because of her sexuality and her politics. And her best friend is straight, and she's finally getting married to a man that the main character obviously doesn't like, but she gets selected to be her maid of honor, and she accepts. And this book basically details the shenanigans that the main character goes through. But then this book gets very dark very quickly. So it gets thrillery as you move on, thrillery/horror-y. So it's very interesting. I wouldn't say it's one of the best books on here. It's definitely more of a quick, easy read. The writing is not exceptional by any means, but it's still very fun, and it gets wild. It gets crazy. So, yeah. And then the last book I want to talk about is The Very Nice Box. This book is written by 2 authors, and this is also, in my opinion, the best bisexual rep I've ever read about, because like I was reading the book and I was like, why is this me? This is literally me. And I was like, oh my God, how did they read my mind? But it's basically about this woman. She had a girlfriend in the past who she was gonna get married to. But then something happened and her girlfriend died, unfortunately. And she never got over this. It's one of the most traumatic experiences of her life. She's still grieving. She's working in this company. She has worked on it for many, many years. And then this guy comes to the company. And he's basically her boss. And something starts to happen, a little like workplace romance situation. But she has always liked girls before, or like mostly girls. So this is like very new for her. She has not done this before. She has never really been with a man before. And then the plot moves on and things are not as they seem. And this is also a little thrillery. It's not 100% rock solid literary fiction. It also has like this air of mystery to it, and there's things that get discovered as you move on with the book. It's really, really good, but also it's really, really funny in a way that only bisexual girls will understand. Like, she literally downloads a dating app in the book, and she's like, at first I checked everyone, and then I unchecked men, and then I rechecked men. And I was like, that's literally like the bisexual girlies who they know they like girls, but they're not sure they like boys. And so they go like back and forth. I like boys. No, wait, I don't like boys. I'm a lesbian. No, wait, actually, maybe I'm just bisexual and I'm like gaslighting myself. Like, that's such bisexual culture. I think that's all the books I want to talk about today. These are obviously the ones that I actually like. I have read other books before that I haven't liked as much, so I didn't include them in this list. But I do have 3 books that are coming out or just came out that you should keep an eye out for, because I'm definitely gonna read them. I don't know about you, but I definitely will. So the first one is Old Enough by Haley Jacobson. She's a bisexual author, and the book features a bisexual main character, which we love to see. We need more bisexual main characters. And she's in college, and again, there's like this coming of age, discovering your sexuality. And I believe there's a romance between her and a non-binary person, but I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm so excited about this one. This is my most anticipated book of the year. And then another book I want to read is Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko, the singer, the lesbian Jesus. And this is basically the book version of her famous song, Girls Like Girls. And I'm very excited about that. And the last one is called Diket, I think that's how I pronounce it. And I followed the author on Instagram, and I randomly found her one day, and I was like, that sounds like a cool book. I'm definitely reading it. So yeah, that is every single book I wanted to talk about today. Thank you for watching, and please don't just read sapphic books now that it's like almost Pride Month, but please read sapphic books all year round, like I do, because I love sapphic books. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!